Thank you, Program Director. Good morning, everyone. Throughout history, nations have put in great effort in creating weapons with the intention of gaining military advantage against their rivals. Technology enhanced the development of these weapons and resulted in dramatic improvement in military tactics. This shall continue to be the case until we humans put our effort in finding solution for peace. I am going to discuss the forecast change in military technology. I have very few minutes to discuss a very, very wide subject, as wide as the African continent and as complex as the African politics. I'm gonna just scratch the surface. I hope you will understand. But I thought it would be important that we start with a definition so that we all aligned in terms of the subject. I choose a definition by Professor Gild Martin, where he described military technology as a range of weapons, equipment, structures, and vehicles used specifically for the purpose of warfare. It includes the knowledge required to construct such technology, to employ it in combat, and to repair and replenish it. He further subdivides technology of war into 5 categories. These categories are the offensive, the defensive weapons, the logistics, communication and the maneuverability of vehicles, sensors to detect and guide weaponry. So that gives you the context of how complex is this subject of military technology is. And it cannot really be discussed in isolation. It's all also affected by the politics of the day, the economics, as well as the environmental factors. So I will cover this subject in as follows. I'll talk a little bit about military technology in the yesteryears, and I'll have a slide to look at the current development, what is happening in our environment today, and I will have a slide just to discuss possible future scenarios, and I will conclude. If you look at military technology around the First World War I and the First World War II, it was really dominated by the Soviet Union and the Western countries. The First World War was really in the trenches. Mainly it was guns, soldiers in the trenches, until the British Army introduced the first tanks. The Second World War was really dominated by new technology in terms of the military aircraft. Tanks were improved. There were radios and radar systems that were also introduced. But the introduction of bombs actually is what really finished the Second World War II. And then the Soviet Union then after that began to develop other technologies such as the supercavitating torpedoes. Post World War II, this is now around the period of what the so-called Cold War. Missile programs were developed, and there was a whole range of military technology race. There was a development of surface-to-surface missiles, surface-to-air, intercontinental missiles, but also a new generation of intelligence sensors was developed. Reconnaissance satellites were also developed. Smart weapons were developed and stealth aircraft. And I think around this time also the long-range drones were also developed. Mainly these systems were developed around the period between 1970 to 1980, and most of them were used during the first Gulf War. Now, if you look at current situation, we're coming from an environment where there was an element of stability and predictability, and we're moving to a territory where nothing is uncertain. The world security environment is utterly unpredictable. The country's uncertified distribution of power, in which everybody capitalizes on power vacuums and regional instability, is the norm. I mean, we've seen the rise of ISIS claiming big land and killing a lot of people. We've observed Russia annex Crimea. We see China incrementally expand in the claims in the South China Sea. We all also know what is happening currently in Yemen. So this is what is currently happening in our world. We see a lot of proxy wars. Not that proxy wars is a new phenomenon. This was used mainly during the Cold War. If you look at the war in Afghanistan, it was part of a proxy war. The war in Syria, in Libya, in Yemen, in Iraq is part of the proxy war that is being conducted by superpowers. But there is a new approach as well, where they use what they called military contractors. This is a concept where probably the retired soldiers are forming companies to go and fight in a country for profit. And then they also have another mechanism where they fund local rebels to stabilize a country. We see a lot of imbalance in terms of David versus Goliath, where big countries are fighting small countries. But what is interesting about that is that that war is never easy. If you look at the war in Yemen, it's a proof that it doesn't mean that because the country is small, the war is going to be quick and easy. We see a use of small drones to attack and trigger air defense systems. There is a huge race to develop counter drone systems because these drones are becoming serious threat to the society, to the airports, and they are used to trigger very expensive air defense systems. There are elements of the 4IR that are being implemented or applied, such as the Internet of Things, advanced data processing. If you look at the countries that are currently have developing smart cities, this is the application of the Internet of Things. Of course, there are technological opportunities in the components of the homeland security, intelligence, protection of infrastructure, and detection of attack. There are companies and countries that invest in new technologies for the future, such as technology include cognitive radars and 5G cellular networks. If you look at a possible future scenario, I believe that small drone technology will continue to trend and will continue to develop, but equally so, the drones countermeasures will continue to dominate the next decade because again, these small drones are becoming a serious threat and nobody really has developed a turnkey solution in terms of counter drones. There is already new strategies of cyber and hybrid warfare, and it includes network attacks. We've seen already some element of this. I think space will become a warfight domain because if you can coordinate and act together across all domains, you have an upper hand on your enemies. And again, that will be using Internet of Things and advanced data analysis. I also believe that nations will continue to incorporate these so-called private contractors, private army, and rebels into their arsenal because that has proven to be remarkably effective and very cost effective. So to conclude, I believe that the world is in a transition period. Technology will continue to evolve naturally. There will be one or two elements where it's going to be revolutionary, but I think it will be a natural progression. I believe that economics, politics, and natural environment will continue to influence the speed of technology advancement and development. Warfare will remain hybrid format and with an increase in military contractors, which is a new trend. I believe that in the next 10, 20 years, 4IR technologies will reach its peak. I also believe that cost-effective innovative solution will dominate big budget acquisition of complicated weapon systems. Again, you see the development of fast patrol boats in countries like Iran in order to counter big aircraft carriers. These are very creative solutions for a very complex problem, but they seem to be at least producing some threats. And finally, I believe that the world will remain in a state where it is, where it's not war or peace, but it's only war and peace. With this, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to conclude my presentation, and thank you very much.